You're listening to the Adventure Party for the 4th week of March 2022. This week, we go through the myriad multiverses of Gygax's DMG, making sure to take off our helms of water breathing whenever we listen to a door, and never assuming we're invisible. The Adventure Party, discussing tabletop and nerd gaming the Irish way.
Welcome, dear travellers. Take a moment, stop a while, put down your packs, shake out your cloaks, and rest here by the fire with myself, me and I, Savage Mick, and the singular, never to be repeated, Warlord Scarr.
I'm here too.
Pull up a bench, and be sure to tie up your mounts. Oh, elsewhere, this is a drawing room after all.
Yes, but it's a drawing room with convenient access to the deep oceans.
and places beyond even that.
Submarine civilizations, you might say.
And planar vistas.
Yeah.
And some tables. Don't worry, there's some tables as well.
Well, how else are we going to rest our brandy glasses? But yes, we are continuing our dive into the original Gary Gygax Dungeon Master's Guide. And diving is indeed the theme of the day as we start on the end of page 56, end of page 55, start of page 56, the Underwater Adventures section. And the word submarine is being used an awful lot in its original Latin context as opposed to, the one everyone uses. Submarine respiration is required to do one of these.
If you're running your adventures in a submarine milieu, then yeah, certain accommodations must be made for those with lungs.
I was going to start off by saying, the premise here really does seem to be putting the onus of the, how do you breathe underwater problem on the players. There's no real sense of the GM being told, give them magic horses, or, have the friendly potion seller come along. No, indeed, this is a mimetic potion seller who you must convince to give you the strongest potions, or helm of underwater action. The sense you get is that, there's all kinds of adventures underwater, but the players have to want to go down there.
And then figure out how to get down there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least get down there in a way they can operate. I mean, yeah, I kind of see it. It sprung into my mind just when you said that, as you say, Gary isn't really making too many accommodations. Presumably, this is geared towards a game where you can see it, but how do you get to it? And the quest to get ready to go underwater almost becomes a set of adventures in itself.
Yeah.
Because it's not the sort of thing that's lying around everyone's spellbook, and in the Gygaxian mold, well, you're just going to have to go and find someone with a spellbook that does have water breathing and borrow it from them?
Yeah, or cruddle it, or whatever.
Okay. Yeah.
This is just more evidence that Gary's first love is just logistics, and the logistical puzzle of the players want to do a thing, how do they do it? How do you properly set up the challenge of them doing the thing to get their reward?
Yeah. Now, he goes on to mention that the DM may allow for some sort of fiat by, at this point, revealing to the players that, you can get these seaweed pills that if you keep popping them, you'll be able to breathe for, I don't know, 10 minutes at a time.
Yeah. I think those are, you jest, but I'm pretty sure those are actually somewhere in Temple of Elemental Evil.
Probably, yeah. Let's go to the beach with a great big bag of pills. It'll be great.
But there's also the fact that it very explicitly draws an analogy, if I may quote. Most methods of underwater breathing are of limited duration, so most submarine adventures will be similar to dungeon adventures as regards time actually spent underwater. So it's going to be an underwater adventure is going to be in the span of minutes to hours rather than days, which is interesting but logistically difficult if you really want them to, woo the mermaid princess or take on the shark god in his...
Well, I hear mermaid kisses can confer water breathing, so get wooing, boys and girls. Yeah, I guess, look, it's going to come down to... I'm sort of kind of thinking of it in terms of West March's games, which we may or may not have discussed at this point in a previous episode. But those would sort of have that kind of Metroidvania aspect to it, if I may. Of you can see this section that you want to get to of the map, but you can't get there because it has a special condition underwater. Now go, find the means to, a trident of water breathing or whatever, to allow you to access that. Or there's the kind of the narrative fiat of a mermaid's kiss confers upon you 3 days worth of air breathing, or the coastal merchant who travels the sea road sells these seaweed pills that allow you to go down for a half an hour at a time. So there's no explicit solution given here, but he gives us enough ideas that depending on the type of game you're running, there might be a few different ways to do this. Do you want this to be a helter-skelter race to the wreck, or several days creeping through the Octopus King's lair? It's there. It's just not spelled out, which is that kind of pendulum we're on with this book. Some things very explicit. Some things, you'll figure it out for yourself. It's fine. I don't always feel like the pendulum is the right place in these.
Yeah, but it sort of sets the tone for how underwater stuff is going. Like, you think about how underwater stuff goes in most games, where if you're not playing this sort of, player driven, do it as you wish to, you're looking for the treasure underwater style thing. And if the players are being asked to visit the Mermaid King and, seduce his daughters or whatever, then, that's a very different thing from if you're going to be spending weeks in the underwater kingdom doing underwater politics. It's a very different thing from thing. And then that's why stuff like water breathing suddenly goes, it very explicitly now goes from, it lasts like an hour or something, to, it lasts 24 hours and it can target up to 10 individuals. So yes, the paladin can bring his horse. That these kind of criteria have been creeping up as things have gone on, because people have fallen more in love with the My Little Mermaid, milieu of, look at all these crazy things, as opposed to what Gary loved, which was the logistical challenge of, Black Bart's flagship is at the bottom of the ocean. It's got a chest full of pearls in it. You want to go get him?
How are you going to do it?
Yeah.
I'd just like to point out, folks, that there is no mermaid artwork in this section that has set myself and the Warlord off. I feel like we're probably just feeling the effects of Valentine's Day, which has just passed. So I can't really explain it any other way. Mermaids on the brain right now. Okay, so he talks about swimming. How do you get around underwater? Well, swimming, though. And then walking. And I would say, no, you look stupid. Don't. I mean, if at all possible, avoid walking underwater. You look like you're doing a bit. It's not funny. And it's very, very slow.
Yeah, and then, of course, there's significant additional problems with vision and, how combat just stops working. And explicit rules for how mermaids with their nets can wrap you up and just stab you. And because you have to wear leather armor, even your big burly fighters is going to get nibbled to bits.
It's almost like it's a hostile environment that you don't belong in.
I mean, fair, but yeah, this is the whole section is to bring out some extra words like submarine and natatorial.
Oh, that's a good one.
Which I can't find it now, but I did notice that there was something about how people with persons able to swim due to lack of encumbrance, not innate natatorial ability, will be able to move vertically as well as horizontally. That's a well-used dictionary, Gary.
What does it mean?
I think it means just like you're born able to breathe water.
Ah, okay. Not innate natatorial ability. There's a mouthful. It's in the movement section, folks. Let's move on. A lot of talk about nets. They're very difficult to use unless you go to Merman College of Nettering.
Yeah, you cannot learn how to use a net underwater unless you train with a net underwater. Which, again, it's like training your griffin. Are you going to spend 3 months at net college underwater just to be able to throw nets, or are you going to accept the GM's logic that you cannot use the nets as well as the Sahagin do?
Yeah, they're kind of signposted as the masters of underwater net combat, which is okay. I hear it's going to be the Olympics next year. So, okay, crossbows not generally great underwater, but special ones can.
And then there's about a page worth of how your spells don't work as well, just to put the thing in. Including the very interesting thing where if you really want to be able to use your spells, you basically underwater you need to stay dry, which is funny logic.
That's just that whole page is just like you figure it out. It is an entire page of you guys. These don't work, with only a few exceptions. The effects of following spells be substantially altered when cast underwater. That's kind of cool. At least there's a few notes there on how fly and lightning bolt and other things work. Lightning bolt underwater. Cool. Underwater, this spell resembles a fireball as pertains to area and effect. Instead of a stroke, the electrical discharge takes the form of a 2-inch radius, or 2-foot radius sphere, centered on the point where a stroke... Am I missing something about fireball? Where a stroke would originate.
It's a stroke of lightning. Stroke of lightning.
Oh, I see, the stroke of lightning. Where a stroke would originate were the spell cast above water. All those within the sphere.
I think that means you lightning ball yourself. I think the stroke of lightning starts like a foot from your fingers. So I do think you're probably just going to hit your own party with that.
Well, no, you nominate for fireball. You nominate a spot within visual.
It's a lightning bolt. So the fireball happens where the lightning bolt would start, which is like 5 feet in front of you. I think.
Well, you know what? That's between Gygax and whoever's underwater at the time. We'll.
Yeah, I guess so.
Join our Discord, folks, to argue the toss on this one. I've definitely gotten that wrong, but I don't think he'd simply alter it to blow you up. Anyways, yeah, but come and find us on Discord, and I'll come. Actually, we're at the midway point, I think, of this episode. So, a little social experiment. All you Discord people, I know you're out there. I want you to go to the YouTube and hit like. Maybe just interrupt wherever you're listening to it here. Just go to the YouTube and hit like. And all you YouTube people, I think we're up to about 40 of you now, and I'd love to see us get to 100. Let's say, will we set a mad target? Let's say the start of summer.
Try to get 100.
So let's see 100 subscribers from YouTube. I want all you YouTube people come to our Discord and say hello, because the comment section of YouTube is notoriously toxic, whereas the Discord people are lovely. And the Discord people are very lovely, but I need to see thumbs up under videos to really make my week. So, do me that for. Let's see if we can get all these people moving back and forth. Like an internet Mexican wave of validation and engagement. Links in the show notes, folks. Right, so let's wring out our nets and decide never to cast whatever that was again, underwater, and have a look at travel in the known planes of existence.
Which are apparently in the player's handbook, which is an interesting place to put them.
Should we have done the player's handbook first?
I didn't get a player's handbook.
We're working with what we've got, yeah.
My overpriced charity auction lot came with the DMG and a monster manual, but no PHB.
So we are ass before cart. It is our way.
Well, I suppose we can always pick up a copy of Advanced Old School Essentials and probably get most of the same thing.
So, I mean, the planes of existence are a big part, I think, of what draws people to higher level D&D, because that's kind of where you're heading.
Yeah, and I find it very interesting that this is all described in the player's handbook, whereas, say, the World of Greyhawk isn't. I just find it interesting because, I'm a Matt Colville fan, and he's often made the point that one of the smartest things that 4th edition did was put all the magic items in the PHB so that players could covet those magic items. And I have to wonder if there's a similar sort of logic going on here where...
This is the holiday brochure.
Where, are the players supposed to be thinking, man, I can't wait to get to the elemental plane of fire and burn to death, or off to the infinite prison of Carcerai and be jailed for being too good in evil place.
They do a little bit of PR work to make it sound a little bit more appealing than that. But I think you might be right.
It is funny though that this is, if you set that up as your target, Like, that the players are going to see, oh, I can go to this cool place. I will go there. That's cool. But there's no similar thing for, well, again, we don't have a copy of PHP, but I'm pretty sure there's no real, like, example world or, like, little chunk of medieval times like there would be in other books, such as the fourth edition DMG. Stay tuned, future episode. It just strikes me as a little interesting that's your sort of your target you're setting.
Well, it goes wider than that. I'm just looking down this page. So here's something. This is of its time. Friends, gather around for this one. So there's a whole bunch of there's a bunch of stuff about spells, magic device, whatever. But then Gary goes on to talk about, look, he's essentially saying there's a multiverse out there, and I can't write all of it. So here's a bunch of books and game systems that might fill in the gaps. And he goes on to name check Boot Hill, Gamma World, Metamorphosis Alpha, Tractics. I thought Tractics was a...
I think that's a World War II... I looked this up, actually. It's a World War II tank war game.
I thought they made remote control cars.
It was already out of print by the time the DMG came out, so I don't know why he was picking that up.
Because he had one there in front of him while he was writing this thing.
I mean, the original D&D needed a copy of Avalon Hill's Random Hiking Adventure to play fully. So, what do I know?
So, a whole bunch of call-outs to God knows how many different companies and creators there. I don't think you'd see it today in D&D.
I think most of these were, at least one point in their existence, I'm pretty sure these were TSR products. Maybe not all of them started, maybe not all of them stayed, but around about this time, 1980s, 1980, 1981, these were all TSR products. Boot Hill, for listeners who don't know, Boot Hill was a cowboy game, and I've seen a lot of people big it up because it is a game where you get outdrawn. Your cool cowboy ends up in the dirt. He ends up in Boot Hill. So people have tried, using it, and it accurately represents the tension of there's a whole bunch of bad people in this town, and they all got guns, and we all got guns, and nobody wants to be shot.
Nobody wants to be shot, but half of those people are run by someone who doesn't care if they're shot, and the rest of them are player characters. This is only going Tombstone. Okay, so here's I'll skip ahead now. Astral and ethereal travel are not difficult. Oh, really? Okay.
I thought that was a 7th level spell.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just jump to the next planet then, shall I? Highlander 2-esque. As the systems for encounters and the chances for the hazards of the psychic wind and ether cyclone are but brief sections of Appendix C random monster encounters, easily and quickly handled. So what he's saying is that going between the interesting places in the astral and ethereal, it shouldn't necessarily take up a lot of your time, and we'll sort it out pretty quickly.
Warden Caden and Elminster have to go to Ed Greenwood's house every Tuesday for tea, so apparently, yeah, it is pretty easy.
Catch some sort of etheric bus. Okay, so what else are we going to say about planar travel?
It's a very short section. I think it doesn't even really come to about half a page. Like, it's just sort of a nice little bit of popping flavour, but the sentiment comes down to use the planes and use other products. Or don't. Up to you. Which, yeah, I guess, but like, it reads more like a Dragon magazine, editorial that you just get snuck in to make space rather than a treatment of the topic, as it were.
Maybe that's exactly what it was, just a page that fell into the pile.
Yeah, I mean, he did just hand the box to...
It's kind of lucky that it came after underwater exploration, but the ordering of subject matter hasn't always been that coherent, as we'll find out. So then, having dealt with going underwater and travelling to the stars, we get to plain old outdoor movement, where we finally settle down from editorializing and big nope lists to have a few good old-fashioned first aid charts.
Yeah, and, very nice, simple.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, actually actionable, stick this on your DM screen stuff. How far you can go on a day on foot if you're light encumbered.
Only 7 pages after the part about getting lost in the woods is how to get through the woods.
It would, yeah. It would have been good to know this, Gary. Oh my word. I feel like the DMG First Ed might be a bit like a pack of regular playing cards, that there are any number of ways to shuffle it. And this is just one we're seeing.
I also, as a minor point, it's all these figures are in miles per day, and there are multiples of 5. So it seems that Gary was not as drawn to the 6-mile hex as he was to the 5-mile or 10-mile hex. Which I think he said which he preferred earlier on. Hold on, let me skip back again.
Scroll back there a couple of pages. He did make a point about it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, there's hexes that are 5 miles in the face and hexes that are 5 miles across, and the GM just has to make a decision. I need to look up I have to look up the Darlene map to really know.
Okay, yes, that's an interesting distinction. 5 miles to a face would be dramatically bigger than 5 miles across. Yeah, okay. And in a sense, easier to calculate traveling around the perimeter of each hex than going through it, based on these figures. But yes, hexes are a bit like that. Okay, so a couple of words on terrain types: marshes, rivers, the difficulties of getting over streams, and then we're on to page 59, and we're nearly done with this bit, aren't we? Oh no, of course, obviously. So there's page 59. First of all, a bit of a brave move. Great big negative image of a chap on a horse with a sigh, or a sickle on a long stick, I suppose, overlooking a ship at sea. Looks like a caravel or a small fishing boat of some sort.
It is another Darlene piece.
Oh, is it? Ah, okay. This is a bit of a brave one because it's executed in the negative, which means all the line work is white and the negative space, and the volumes are black, which is it's a choice. I guess it could have been a linotype carving or something like that. But what it is a printer's nightmare back in the 70s when you're doing these things, because big sections of black ink have a nasty habit of going awry if you're a printer. So this page 59, I guarantee it was a headache for someone who was running the presses. It just gets everywhere. Okay, but that leads us, of course, but maybe it's related to the section that follows, which is, it falls perfectly in cadence with all of our talk of travel, which is infravision and ultravision, which maybe looks like negative image. I don't know. There may be method to the madness here. And of course, again, it starts with reference to Player's Handbook, which is the read-along piece for this entire book, really, isn't it? They're a little more self-contained these days, aren't they?
Yeah, certainly an awful lot of things that people consider rules have been moved into PHB, and the DMG is far more the place of specific DM-facing things. And you can debate back and forth whether that's a good thing or not. Some people like the idea of players only worry about player rules and the GM has to sort out the GM rules, but others will shoot back that everyone should be on the same page. It's going to be a thing to argue about, I suppose.
So he explains infravision, which is basically heat vision, and goes into it's a decent explanation of how it would look and what you would actually see, which I think is kind of good. It's treated as a scientific phenomena. You simply live in a universe where certain people can acquire infravision and see infrared waves and see heat signatures and differences in thermal radiation. So, okay, fine. It points out that light sources effectively blind that if they give off heat, and talks with some of the creatures that have infravision. Oh, but here it gets. I think he's this Platonic idea of vision is sort of encapsulated here. Creatures with infravisual capability of unusual nature, such as those which see infravisually to 90 feet, are actually emitting infrared radiation from their eyes and seeing what is within this visual range by receiving the reflected radiation, which I believe is how Plato thought that we saw, except with light. No, seriously, it held for quite a long time. We thought there was sort of sight rays that came out of us, and we were basically doing the light equivalent of echolocation. But in this net, so this means that all those things that are running around with infravision in D&D basically have remote controls for eyes. You know, they're sending out beams of oh, okay, yeah,
Yeah, and of course the consequence is the eyes of all such creatures will appear as very brightly glowing red when observed by other creatures with standard infravision. And most monsters inhabiting underground areas will have this form of infravision.
we were doing so well.
Everyone has glowing red eyes. All those pictures of orcs with glowing red eyes is true.
That explains why. Okay, it's that weird amalgam of magical thinking and here's the science, and we're making a sandwich, and it's called D&D. I think I lambasting the audience. Was it last time we did this about trying to science the magic? But Gary's given you a crowbar with which to pull apart my argument. There you go. Ultravision, something similar. Ability to see radiation above violet in the normal visible spectrum. Don't think I've encountered that in too many editions of D&D.
At a certain point, they just sort of collapsed both of these into dark vision and didn't really. They stopped explaining the science magic, so there was no need to differentiate them anymore. It's just like you can see in the dark for 60 feet. How? Shut up.
Yeah, it's basically the same, isn't it?
Yeah, and like I don't know which people would prefer because I see nothing but endless arguments about dark vision these days because it means that everyone can just kind of forget about torches or light spells or Billy the Lantern Boy and just don't play human, loser. Play elf dwarf gnome master race and just walk through the dungeon as if you belong there.
He makes a couple of points about ultravision. It's not especially useful underground because none of the ultraviolet radiation penetrates, and magic weapons apparently give off ultraviolet light and spoil ultravision in the way that bright, hot light sources spoil infravision, that's kind of cool.
Wait, so you could get a tan? You could just hold up your magic sword to your face and get a tan? Is that what he's saying?
Well, apparently. Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of Frank Rosada's fellas were very sort of, had a nice mahogany hue to them, probably from all the magic items.
I guess. They weren't wearing anything else.
We won't talk about the cancer risks of singing swords until we get there. It moves on, of course, to that, the natural enemy of vision, which is invisibility.
Now I'll sneak up on the monster invisibly. How often has this cry rung forth from eager players to your campaign? How often have you cursed because of it? Never fear, there are many answers to the problem of invisibility, and most difficulties will be resolved after you read the following rules and suggestions regarding the subject.
Oh.
I thought this was a book for...
Well, this is for the DM, right?
Yeah, but I thought it was... It's both for starting DMs, but this point is very clearly, hey, veteran DMs, here's how to screw over those dumb rogues and magic users.
Yeah. And I filled with trepidation going to this section because it's not a you against them game. Come on. It's not... And they will try and make it. Your players will try and make it you against them, but you're smarter than that. Don't fall for this.
Gary, if you didn't want Rob Kuntz to run through your dungeon, invisible and unhearable, for the entire run of his adventures, you shouldn't have given him the ring of invisibility in the boots of Elvenkind. This is your fault. Stop. Anyway. I'll be quiet.
Okay, it's bog standard visibility, how it works, you can't be seen, ways that it can be detected, etc. And a few more tables. Intelligence apparently is the stat for spotting invisibility. Is it because you sort of figure out, oh wait, the candle flickered and that door seems to be opening and closing? Is it stuff like that? There's muddy footprints in the ground.
All of the various tricks, and of course, you still smell, so the dogs can still find you.
So a little bit of deduction. The smarter NPCs will figure out you're invisible and spot you, I guess, or discern your location with a degree of certainty. Small note on mirrors. It is important for DMs to remember that in order to be reflective, a mirror must have a light source. Thank you, Gary. Sometimes we forget that. why is this here?
I suspect it's got something to do with Medusas and a fight in the darkness or something.
The most random thing to drop in. Okay, and then detection of evil and or good, because we're done with travel apparently. We're just putting in random stuff that Gary went. Oh, actually,
we're still in the we're not in the travel. We're in the adventure.
Okay. Oh, we're sort of we're now bopping. This is a nice sort of a palate cleanser before we get on to another big section. We're just gonna throw in a few things we hadn't thought of until now. So we've done infravision, visibility, mirrors, detection of evil and good. Anything to say there? What's Gary got to say?
There was something about. Oh yes, he references the shadow, during the invisibility section.
Like the pulp hero, the shadow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Psionic invisibility is a mind control ability. The shadow knows, which is more similar to the druidic invisibility animals, for the infected creatures does not notice sounds or odors from the psionic. That's an interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting random reference there. I just felt I had to point that one out.
Oh, the Alec Baldwin movie probably come out recently, and he thought he'd reference it.
Really? Oh yeah, I suppose yeah.
No, no, it's like 20 years actually. Maybe the late 90s, I think. Alec Baldwin made a movie. They resurrected the pulp hero of the 30s, the Shadow.
Yeah, he fights Genghis Khan or something.
He does. It's well worth a look. It's great fun. Yeah, there's good performances in it, and bits with submarines. It's good old fashioned pulp movie. Better than there's any right to be.
For all there is this, several paragraphs dedicated to why invisibility can easily be broken by dust or dogs smelling you or your footprints in the dirt or whatever. The actual chart he gives for how creatures of 7th level and with intelligence of sufficiently high, it's actually a relatively fair chart as these things go. It's like to have a decent chance, you have to have like intelligence 15 and be like a level 12 monster or something. So it's actually not that like crazy punishing.
I'd almost say that would it make invisibility slightly irrelevant, given that you can substitute for unintelligent creatures, you can just substitute in keen hearing or smell.
I feel like the point of this section is to give GMs guidance. I'm not sure it's great guidance, but the chart itself.
Yeah, invisibility isn't just a way of solving every problem on the PC side.
Yeah, but like the fact that it doesn't start the level until you're fighting 7 hit dice creatures, which you should like when you first get invisibility, you should not be. You should probably be very careful around 7th level creatures anyway. And once you get into like level 12 creatures, yeah, it's like that 2nd level spell dude is not going to work out forever. It's for getting around minions, which I think is probably fair.
Yeah, absolutely. So shorter side of mirrors and then detection of evil and good. And I think he goes to some lengths here to point out that you won't get a read off everything. It's more sort of exceptional sources of evil and good, like a very good or evil aligned character or source of good and evil is what pings this thing. So you won't be able to tell if your toast is evil.
Yeah, it's like it's not the classic thing of the paladin attacks evil and 3 people who beat their wives start glowing and he kills them. No.
Yeah.
You have to be like level 8 or higher before you really register the detect good and evils thing just for being a bad person.
Which feels like a rule written to address. It's like one of those no iguanas in the pool rules that you see posted somewhere. It's like, well, I think we know that at some point someone put an iguana in the pool and it didn't work out well. Okay, so that's detecting good and evil. And other forms of detection include listening at doors, which gets a lot more time than mirrors.
Do I feel... Sorry. Trying to remember. Oh, yes. There's a mention of the infamous ear seeker, which is literally just a maggot that lives in a rotten wood, and if you put your ear up to the door, it crawls inside your ear and eats your brain. That's what an ear seeker is.
After the 18th time in that dungeon that a player had listened to the door, Gary sprung. Gary just lost his plot there and went, right, you now get an ear infection from a door.
Yeah, it's a little bit... It's one of those things about old school playing is that very quickly you'll see where players sort of optimize the go through dungeon procedure of, send the rogue out first, use the 10-foot pole, tap every square, go as quickly as you can to minimize wandering encounters, and listen at the door. And Gygax seems to have not been appreciative of how procedural this got and kept coming up with monsters to make people doubt their procedure, I guess.
Just kick in the door, he's saying. I mean, he outright says it here. This requires a special check in secret by you to determine if any sound is heard. Because of this, continual listening becomes a great bother to the DM. And he also insists that people remove all headgear, including padded caps and mail coifs, anything at all, to make it as inconvenient for players as possible. This smacks of, well, Gary, you're throwing gotcha after gotcha at us. We're going to be very cautious now. And this infuriates Gary at the point where he's like, I'm going to make listening at door checks almost useless. Why are bugbears on the examples of silent creatures? Are bugbears real?
Bugbears have always had this weird 7-foot ninja thing going on. It's never really been explained. It's just a thing they have and has never really gone.
I think we've figured out where it comes from now. Peevish Gary Gygax. They always be shuffling, right? Those big padded feet. Right, so that's, and with the rate, okay, so your ear size is definitely going to play into your chance of success, because there's it's possibly my favorite table to date. Race of listener, chance of hearing noise, presumably because you've got pointier ears to capture more sound.
Apparently.
Oh boy.
Gnomes are apparently even better at hearing than gnomes. I thought their whole thing was scent, anyway. Also, apparently, there's no such thing as a snoring orc. Orcs just don't snore because sleeping creatures have got extra bonuses to not be heard or something. Where did I see that? Yeah, no, it's there after the bugbear thing. Sleeping or resting or alerted creatures will not be heard either. So, people who are asleep and also people who are ready at the door to jump on you, these are completely silent.
Yeah.
Who installs the doors in these dungeons? Like, the soundproofing is incredible.
A good thick oak. And banded iron soak up a lot of noise.
Yeah, but like, there's a perfect airtight seal between that and the rough-hewn stone from which this dungeon was carved.
The makers of old, their secrets are lost to us now. It's can't smell anything beyond the door, can't see anything, can't hear anything. It's, for every intended purpose, there's nothing behind that door until you open it. Anyways, on that Schrödinger-like note, and it should be noted, folks, the Schrödinger's cat bit is Schrödinger pointing out how unreasonable and how unlikely he thought that interpretation of quantum mechanics was. And yet now we just use it to explain quantum mechanics. We should probably hook up a dynamo to him and get the free energy off him as he spins in his grave. All that aside, how do we wrap this up? We're not doing combat. We're doing combat next time.
Folks, we were about to launch into. We've had fun these last 8 episodes of reading through the 60 pages of this book. That fun is about to turn into confusion and rage for the next 20 pages or so as we dive into the combat section of this thing. And I've read ahead. This is where the DMG gets rough. So we'll have to save that for another day when we're brandied up and we have gotten brand new smoking jackets. I think
is brandy going to be strong enough? I'm thinking it goes straight to the old isopropyl at this point. Right. So join us next time. More Tome of Gygax, where we actually hit the marrow at the center of the DMG. How on earth does combat work? I've been Savage Mick.
I've been Scarr, the Warlord.
And get on your way now. Get those filthy animals out of here. You've got many a mile on the road to cover. Watch out for those 6-inch hexes. Or 6-mile hexes, is it? Yeah. Well, that bit didn't work, did it? Get out. Gone. Go away. Goodbye.
This party's over.
This party's over.
Thanks for listening to The Adventuring Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventurePTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventuringparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventuringparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, link in the show notes. The Adventuring Party is released under Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share Alike version 3 license.